Very good morning. I'm Malcolm Graham-Wood. I'm delighted again to be at Core Finance TV for my CEO interview. And today my guest is Steve Bowler, who is the CEO of IGas Energy.
Morning, Malky.
Very welcome to you.
Nice to
see
be
you again, yeah.
nice to be in a room with you.
Yeah, absolutely. God, there's a lot been going on, and in particular at IGas.
Yeah.
So what I want to do first of all, most people will know about IGas, but you've added an arm or a logo on it. So why don't you just give us a quick overview of what IGas looks like?
Well, I guess we'll come back to the geothermal acquisition, but we continue to have a very stable conventional business. We made some sort of proactive decisions in May when the oil price was around sort of $30 and trending around there. So as owner and operator of those assets, that's something we can do, which we did. All about preserving cash at that point in time. Though those assets still have a 2p NPV10 of $110 million at $50 long term. So still a lot of value in there. The Shale, we continue to push forwards with governments, but that is slow progress, as I think the OGA have got a lot on their plate at the moment. And then we've got the GT Energy acquisition that we did recently.
Good. Right, we'll come back to all those things. You announced your interims last week, so it's worth saying to us, we know it's been a tough time, but to just run us through the interims and then how you saw the second half when you wrote that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, really, we'd budgeted at sort of 50-55 for this year. We had capex of about £10 million for the year mostly across our conventional portfolio. When we got to April, May, we saw where the world was, what was likely to happen, changed our focus to cash preservation, reduced our capex to 6 million. So about £2 million on the production assets in terms of plant and machinery, which is sort of our ongoing rate, and then £4 million for 2 development projects, which are still very good even at these oil prices. So water flood projects on existing sites with very attractive IRRs. And we reduced costs, so we've implemented about £1.6 million per annum of cost savings across the business. And that'll start to show through in back end of this year.
And you mentioned me very quickly on that front. So there are 2 or 3 things I'd like to ask you about that. But first of all, you've had an excellent position in hedging.
Yeah.
So why don't you talk us through what your hedging policy was and what, if any, you can do for next year?
Yeah, we added, or we do hedging in 2 regards, principally sort of oil price hedging and FX. So when we were in terms of the FX first, when I saw that the FX was around 115, we hedged out sort of about $1 million a month there at 117 for the rest of 2020 and into 2021. So that was a good hedge to do. We've still got that hedging in place. We haven't added any more, given it's been sort of very volatile. So that was a good deal. And then the oil price hedging, we're hedged at $53 for the rest of this year for 180,000 barrels. And then at about 45 into next year for the next 12 months, it's sort of blended about $50 for a third of our production. So we will look to add to that as we go forwards. That gives us some stability in the cash flow and helps us plan. But obviously it's been very weak, so we've reduced the level of hedging. But we have added some recently when it's in the mid-40s.
I mean, that's very good, and it's been most impressive because it does not give you some stability when you need it most. The other thing, apart from the hedging, is, and you mentioned it briefly there, is what I referred to as your significant flexibility in the note afterwards by taking these fields off stream very quickly when you realise. So why don't you just 2 things? First of all, tell us how you did that, why you were able to do it so quickly, and so on. And what oil price you'll bring them back on, and you mentioned water floods. Well, I know you've got one up and running and one nearly ready to go. So So a three-pronged question there.
Okay, I'll try and remember. I'll try and remember all of those.
I've got them here.
But I think really we have, our blended operating cost is sort of 30 plus, depending on the FX, because all of our costs are in sterling. So, But that's a blended rate, so we have some with lower operating costs and some with higher across the portfolio. So we proactively shut in 15 fields, which was about 600 barrels of oil per day in May, because it was about cash, so that saved us about £500,000 per month, and that rang true, and knowing that we could bring them on without too many challenges at all.
Yeah.
So we have now brought 10 fields back on, so we have 5 remaining shut in, and we can do that because we're owner and operator of 100% of most of those fields, so that gives us that sort of flexibility. In terms of the capex, as you rightly say, that's really on 2 waterflood projects. Scampton is the first one. The team did a brilliant job of bringing that on time and on budget, so we brought that on stream in the summer. That's got an IRR of sort of in the 40s, with oil prices around the 50s. So still very good, very good IRRs. And the reason why they are so strong is really because they're on existing sites.
Yeah.
So it's all about enhanced oil recovery, and the OPEX per barrel is sort of £5 to £7.5 a barrel, depending on which project. So that's a nice one to do, and it brings us an additional 100 barrels of oil per day. Welton is, as you know, is a sort of bigger field for us. Similar project, water flood. We expect that to be sort of fully operational back end of this year and the beginning of next year, and those barrels to start showing through in the second half of next year, and those IRRs are over 100%. So
that's good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's good. The payback's a bit longer than some other projects maybe. We carry on doing the smaller projects with quick payback. So there's still plenty to go for.
I'm going to come on to unconventional shale next, but basically that within your conventional project portfolio, is that where you see things going from here, on and off? Or
I mean, when we
off other projects?
Yeah, we've got a number of projects that we've hit the pause button on. We got planning for a gas to wire project at Bletchingley, which we paused because of the commodity prices. As you know, we own the licence next to UCOG, so we've got a gas discovery down there at Godley Bridge, and we've got the mick rights as well there that we can go after in a single well when the environment is right. So we're still looking at those. It's just been a question of priorities as we've gone through these strange 6 months.
Yeah. I didn't mention Shale, really. I mean, especially under the circumstances. Is there any light at the end of the tunnel, or are you just saying, whoa?
Well, as I said at the start, really, we continue to have a dialogue. I mean, all the rationale is still absolutely there. You know, the climate change report says we need 70% of the gas that we use today in 2050, and that's entirely compatible with the net zero objective. We continue to import more and more gas as a country. It doesn't, don't need to go back too far until sort of 2000 when we were a net exporter. We now import 50% of our energy requirements. So the need is still there, certainly in my mind, but it's slow progress, Mark. I think it's fair to say.
Right, I'm going to move over to geothermal and the acquisition you just made. I've probably got 4 or 5 questions on it specifically, but the best thing I think is to ask you to talk us through the rationale of the acquisition first of all, because there are lots of specific things. But why don't you give us why you did it?
Yeah, well, Porrig and I have been speaking for quite a few years actually, as I've known him over that time, and talking about UK energy, UK projects, government policy, where it may go. I think the government policy should become clearer in the white paper when that comes. But really, the direction of travel is very clear, that we need to broaden our energy portfolio as a country and therefore as a business to have longevity. So I think, that very much makes sense, and the why now was really because Porrig and the team have done a very good job, in particular getting the Stoke project to a good state, and Stoke is basically going to build or is building a heat network. They've got a government grant for that. Porrig was very helpful to Stoke in that regard, and then it moves into an execution phase, and that's very much our bag. You know,
Yeah,
we drill,
I mean, it's
still
interesting,
drilling
yeah,
wells and operating assets, which is exactly what we do.
Yeah, so you would say that, you know, because you've got a portfolio of onshore wells, for the want of a better expression, you've got first mover advantage in this front. How do the economics of geothermals work? I mean, in the sense that, you know, and I notice all there is in terms of the end customer at the moment is a possible contract with Stoke on Trent Council, but how do the economics and the engineering work for you?
Well, if maybe I'll touch on the deal and how we shape that, and then we'll go to the project. But in terms of the deal, it's an all-share deal. Yeah. The upfront consideration is £500,000, which is satisfied in shares at 22.5p, so quite above where we are at the moment. Yeah. And then the rest of the payments up to £11 million are all related to the Stoke project. There's 750,000 on financial close, so that's when we've signed up the offtake agreement with Stoke and we have the debt, non-recourse debt funding in place. And then the bulk of it is on first supply of heat and thereafter, and we're sort of really paying 50% of MPV. So those types of projects, it's a 14 megawatt project at Stoke. You get government renewable heat incentive for the heat that you produce, because these wells can carry on for 100 plus years. And that's £55 a megawatt hour. So from government on a 14 megawatt project, that's £2.5 million. Plus whatever we agree with the off-taker, which, as you say rightly, is Stoke Council, to go into their heat network. So they are attractive projects. We've announced as well a term sheet that GT Energy has signed up to, which is non-recourse funding. So the funding sits with GT as a subsidiary to fund the drilling of the 2 wells and the facilities on top. So we think, you know, this has been geothermal has been around for a while, but it's really grown a lot in Europe. There's about 30 projects right in Paris. There's the similar sort of number in Munich. And really what you're doing is looking for a big end user. So whether that's a heat network or a university or a college or a hospital or anything like that, then those are the ideal sorts of customers. For us, we've worked the economics based on heat alone, but you can get some electricity generation from it as well. And Stoke are a very sort of progressive council in their climate change ambitions, and you know this is renewable energy. So combined with our skill sets, I think it's very exciting, and you can see sort of 50 or 100 of these types of projects across the UK.
So putting my dunce's cap on, are you saying that it's got a 100% chance of success? When you drill down, you're going to find the heat, and it's perfectly possible and economically attractive to provide.
No, I would never say it's you know me, Malky. I don't, you know, it's very rare to get anything that's 100%. There obviously is some risk, and you wouldn't get those types of IRRs without the risk. But what you're doing is you're drilling 2 wells, one essentially to bring up water, so you're looking for heat. Absolutely sure as you drill down, you get more heat. That I am 100% confident in. But you're also looking for permeability in the reservoir because you're disposing of water at the other side. So there is some risk in that project, but there is no risk in finding heat. Yeah. There's lots of offset data, and we know the UK could be pretty good for that. You know, you go from ground source heat pumps for people's homes. Yeah, that's not what we're doing. No, you can go a bit deeper where our wells will be about sort of 3,000 meters, so similar to a Springs Road in that regard. Yeah. And we expect to get temperatures of about 110.
So, to put it a different way, how much of the economics of the project dependent on the renewable heat incentive? Because that's a government thing. Yeah. What's the chances that they might suddenly say, well, we've done enough of that, we won't do it again, or we'll change the terms or something? Is there an RHI risk?
There's always a risk with government. I'll probably get told off for saying that, but of course policies change. But they've extended the RHI again, and that's out to March 2022. I really see no reason why they wouldn't extend it further, because we need this. As a country, we're very good at decarbonising electricity. We've shown we can displace coal through gas and wind and solar, but heat is another challenge entirely.
So, what's the next clean project off the front of the cab rank? Other things in your inbox?
We've been looking at a few different types of projects because, we've got 100 sites across the country. Some of those have got grid connections. The Bletchingley project I spoke about is a gas to wire project. We've thought and looked about batteries on that site because if you've got a grid connect, does that work? We've looked at, we are starting to look at CCS opportunities across well stock and solar where we have some freehold land. So I think the challenge at the moment is really with the current power prices. We've seen the gas price increase a lot recently, haven't we? So, that may well feed and does feed through to the power prices, but those curves dropped earlier in the year hugely. So when those recover, we'll start to look at those. And of course, with our, we've got a couple of gas sites, and we're looking at the economics of hydrogen and are there modular systems you can put on. So I think none of us really know what direction it's going to take, and certainly don't know the time frame. But as an onshore operator across the country, we're very sort of well placed to benefit from all of those changes, I think.
So coming to finances, I seem to remember you were quite candid in doing a fairly serious restructuring, which must look good. How did after all this troublesome 6 months and so on, but with also you move aside, how do the funds look like? What's the balance sheet and the debt situation look like in IGas? Yeah,
so debt has increased a little bit in the first half, as really we had the capex as well. So at if you exclude the hedges, sort of in mid-40s, we're cash flow neutral pre-capex. So covering operating costs, financing charges, and G&A. So that's why we pulled back. We've got a high leverage to the oil price, but equally the other way around. So debt increased a little bit in the first half, but we've got a facility from BMO that we go through a 6-month redetermination, and we were drawn $15 million, and the capacity there is 29 million at the moment. So we've got headroom if we want to draw on that debt. It's just striking that right balance. We've got flexibility, I think.
That's good. We're nearly at the end, and at the end I always ask, where you think of the business looking 12 to 18 months. In particular, today I'd like to say, you've restructured a lot, and you've taken wells off and you brought other ones on. You've shown how it's good to do, the various different ways you've done it. How do you see IGas looking over the next 12 to 18 months, given all we've talked about?
It's a very good question, because I don't think anyone knows what's going to happen in the next 12 or 18 months. So I think the key is to be flexible. We go through the normal budgeting process in Q4. As I said, our plant and machinery expenditure is about £2 million per year, and the rest is broadly discretionary. So we will enter the year, I expect, with a number of projects that are contingent on things improving, but positioned to hit the go button on those. And I personally think the oil price is in this sort of state of 40s, mid-40s, until we go through into Q1. And then, as I really see the restrictions coming off in the spring of next year across the world. Climate as well has an influence on that, and I think that could drive oil prices, up into the 5s and then into the 6s as we go through 2021. And at that point, it gives us the confidence to move a number of projects forwards again. So it's been hard work, I think, for the team to pull through, but they've done an excellent job in keeping things running and I think making the right decisions as we've gone through that.
It seems like a pretty good call. I think you've used flexibility and giving yourself the optionality within the business pretty well. So I think you've done a great job. So thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you, Malky. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, and you.
Thanks.
I'm Malcolm Graham-Wood. It's been my great pleasure to have as my guest on my Core Finance CEO interview today, Steve Bowler, who's the CEO of IGas Energy. Thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye now.